Okay, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we actually have a follow-up on the live stream that I did a couple days ago, essentially pointing out this particular watch as pretty much the new Seiko to have in terms of collecting and wearing. I feel like this one really takes the place of the SKX for a lot of different reasons, and not just the ones that are pretty obvious to some of you. So a little bit about the brand. Seiko was founded back in 1881. They're Japanese in origin, but now have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end. In terms of the type of watch, this is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics in design language: you're looking for a diver, you're gonna want water resistance, typically with some type of screw down crown. You're gonna want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelets. This is the Seiko Prospex SRPE93 Turtle Reissue. It's formerly known as the SRPE777 prior to Seiko's update from air divers 200 meters to the to just divers watch 200 meters in terms of the case back text. And for me, yeah, it's quickly filling the space of the more contemporary icon of the Seiko SKX in terms of heightened demand based on specific nomenclatures like the SRP777J1 going for nice premiums above the original retail. Similar to the previous craze over the SKX 007J1 models, which after discontinuation led to heightened values for all SKX models, regardless if they were J1 or K1, etc. So what many non-hardcore Seiko dive fans don't know is that this turtle, or at least the one that it's a reissue of, was actually a direct precursor to the beloved SKX. The original 6306 and 6309 that these turtle reissues were based off of were not only evolutions of the legendary 6105 divers of the late 60s, but they were also Seiko's biggest commercial success in the diver space to date upon their release. So that setup eventually led to the launch of the 7002 scuba watches, which would eventually evolve into the SKX 007 and 009 that we all know and love. Now these go for an MSRP of $495. I was able to get this from Market Long Island Watch. They're going for $372, so it's nice to still be able to get these beneath MSRP, so definitely check that out. Market Long Island Watch. Actually, you can see there's a Tropic strap there in frame as well, because I also purchased that through Mark. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, so first off, we do have this Tropic strap in frame because we're gonna put it on the Tropic strap. The strap that it comes on is actually perfectly fine. I wore the same type of strap, although admittedly downsized, on my mini turtle, and this one has gotten tons of use. This has kind of been my summer beater watch for quite a few years now, and yeah, the strap really holds up. It's a fine piece, it does its job, absolutely. But for me, I wanted to key into a little bit more of that I guess that vintage aesthetic in terms of making this thing a little pretty timeless, because this aesthetic itself has been around for a really long time, and what really motivated that was this piece here, which is my new SRP 317 Slim Turtle, and putting that on a genuine Tropic rubber strap just really suits the character so much. So I'll do a Tropic rubber strap review follow-up, but I just wanted to kind of pull these in frame so you could kind of see them all together, a little family resemblance and whatnot. But some really cool features about this watch and why you probably should stop chasing down the SKX. This is a legitimate dive watch. This is a tool watch, and everything that made the SKX cool, this has and more. Really, the best thing about the SKX wasn't so much the watch itself, it was more so what it inspired. It was this everyday tool watch, great bargain. It punched so high above its weight class, but now because they're so rare and cost so much, technically you'd be buying something with, you know, inferior technology, because that old 7S26 movement doesn't have hacking or hand winding, whereas the 4R movement that's in here does. Also, this is a serious piece of kit, guys. Although this isn't a Patty edition, this is just to show you guys how serious Seiko and Patty are about the standard Turtle watch. I mean, this is a watch that if you go into a dive shop, if there's any mechanical watches, it will probably be this watch for its ultimate legibility and its really utilitarian nature, even especially on this strap. So you're saving a little bit of money. You're not paying extra for a kind of ho-hum bracelet. And then of course it has drilled lugs and everything, which is great. So it's going to go great on there. I've done a full review and, you know, kind of multiple follow-ups on these Turtle reissues on the channel, different types of comparisons. But this is a brand new one actually that I purchased from Market Long Island that I wanted to show you guys, because it even has the updated Lume plop and, sneaky enough, made in Japan dial, which is awesome, made in Japan case back as well. So very, very cool. It's something that I think Seiko has kind of noticed that the US market, the North American market, is kind of some of their loudest market, and also a real area of trend setting when you see how you know, Grand Seiko has really taking on, you know, it's truly its own separate brand now, because of the popularity, a lot of it having to do with the popularity in North America. So seeing that, and, you know, obviously a lot of the Seiko 5s now do have that made in Japan stamp on the dial. It lets you know that, hey, when these first came out, I was really worried about QC. Now, check that out. I mean, everything lines up. I'm really surprised. And again, it's giving you the collectability of having that made in Japan on the dial. No, it doesn't give you a kanji day wheel, but you are getting the made in Japan on the dial and on the case back. And the fact is, if it says that, it was actually made in Japan, which is very, very nice. Now, in terms of some of the diameters and everything, it's 45 millimeters in diameter, which is a little bit larger, but hear me out, this thing actually wears really, really well. You can see there's a lot of overhang in terms of the case versus the bezel and the dial, so it all steps down smaller, so visually it's going to wear a lot smaller. It's only 13 millimeters thick and has a lug to lug of 48 millimeters, which may seem, you know, a little bit larger, but for a 45 millimeter watch, 48 isn't bad at all, especially when you look at kind of the round bubbly nature, as well as these beautiful curvaceous undercuts that Seiko is really known for in terms of, you know, having those really dialed in ergonomics. You're getting a flat mineral hardlex. You're also getting a unidirectional rotating bezel, 120 clicks. Not quite as snappy as you know, some of the newer, more high-end Prospex models, but I will say, feels like a Seiko, does the job. And it lines up. So, perfect. Now, also inside, you're going to have the 4R36, which is hacking and hand windable. It just has a shorter power reserve versus if you were to compare it to a 6R movement. But other than that, you're going to still get a lot of the same goodies. In terms of the dial, you're getting raised indices. It's matte black. You got the day-date complication at 3. Also, it does have that nicely updated Lume plop there at the 3 o'clock to maintain ISO compliance for the updated ISO standards. Now, you're also getting very thickly applied Lume, which is fantastic, and then you're getting these great polished hands that are also very iconic, especially when you do think about the SKX and kind of that layout. So it definitely has a great look to it. You're also, of course, it's 200 meters of water resistance. It even has the diverse 200 meters text, which means that it does meet or exceed the ISO standards to carry that text. 22 millimeters on the lugs here, which for me is proportional, especially considering how wide this piece is. I'd prefer a 20 millimeter lug, you know, normally, but because this is a 45 wide, it actually does help the watch stay quite proportional and actually does shrink the watch down on wrist. It comes with this great silicone driver strap. You can see with the milled keeper and buckle there. And again, I had this running this setup on the Mini Turtle. It worked just fine, and it absolutely did the job. So before I change over onto the Tropic strap here, I'm just gonna put it on really quickly for you guys, so you can just, for those of you who might not be interested in really dressing this piece up, we'll go ahead and get that going. And in that live stream, I talked a little bit more about the theory in terms of why this watch is so collectible and why it's pretty much the prime piece that you're really going to want right now if you want some of that romanticism of having a genuine tool watch that will actually age and get some stories going. Like if you were to buy a, you know, one of these special edition turtles that are out there, you know, you get the funky dials, you do get some ceramic and all that. I mean, it just kind of defeats the purpose of having this really versatile, super sedate and classic kind of everyday. You could see somebody wearing this and they might not even necessarily be a dive watch person. They might not even be a watch person or a Seiko collector. They might just be somebody who's like, oh, that is a beefy watch and that does the job. And hey, I went and I got scuba certified. Yeah, I took some PADI courses, and this is the watch that I bought. And I think that's just really cool, and I like that. There's just a certain level of honesty that's there where, you know, you don't necessarily have some overt themes in terms of the aesthetic. Instead, really the look of this and the style all relies on, everything that's intrinsic to the watch. It's not selling you on, certain shades of blue or certain textures on the dial or a Save the Ocean theme or, a bunch of shiny things being added. This is just such a classic look, and it's one of the things that, again, make that SKX 007 so desirable today, is that it was just so versatile, kind of go anywhere, do anything, and understand that it's going to do its job for you. So with that said, let's actually what we'll do is we'll cut away, we'll get the Tropic strap on, and we'll get into this a little bit deeper. Okay guys, check that out on my 7¼ to 7½ inch wrist. Really wears beautifully, and that genuine Tropic rubber strap just takes it up to another level, adds a little bit more refinement, also keys in on those retro vibes versus the more contemporary style silicone strap. So again, I don't want to make this about just a strap review, because I'll follow up and do that. But I will say that it's just right at home on this piece. It's fantastic. You do, the holes on the genuine Tropic strap are a little bit smaller. So you're going to want to get updated spring bars. They have them on eBay. Essentially, you can get them dialed in the way you want, but basically you're going to want to go for the 2mm versus the 2.5mm thick that come standard on the Seiko straps. And then you can even get them with the fatter tips that are going to be the 1.1mm thickness, so you're not going to have any of that clicking, which I know drives you nuts. Sometimes you put on a strap on a watch and you like bend your wrist and you just hear it clicking and you don't know where it's coming from. It's because the spring bars are too small for the holes that they're going through. But you can see here, guys, and I know some of you might be thinking that's a little large, it's a little overpowering, but I have to tell you, it wears so much smaller. You got to look at also what's actually coming into contact with your wrists. Great mobility there. You can see that nice undercut that's even echoed within my Grand Seiko that I recently purchased, in terms of having those nicely sculpted undercuts there. This beautiful classic cushion case. And then you got to remember that dial, although it's very sparse, it has a couple steps to it, right? You get that sloped chaptering. You get, of course, the fully indexed bezel insert, and it just plays and balances everything just beautifully, guys. I get excited about this piece. And again, it's crazy because it's under $500, and you can even get it for under $400 from Market Long Island, while supplies last. In terms of getting into some of the theory portion of this, before we move into some Lume shots and light transition, guys, these are just really desirable. I've actually been noticing their prices going up and up and up. And even when I was speaking with Market Long Island, he actually mentioned, normally he would have in the upwards of, high teens in terms of what he would have in stock for these pieces. And lately he's been down into the single digits. I think when I ordered this one, it was one of two that he had left until the next restock. So these have been selling a lot more, and it's cool because it's just kind of this quiet movement. Folks are just kind of getting back to the basics. And as much as I love, again, these really cool special editions with these glitzy, glamorous colors and textures, and, you know, adding a lot of glossiness and, you know, interesting, magnifiers for the day and date and all that. This is really down to the essentials, and because of the price, you can get this and you can wear it. You could wear it the way it was meant to be worn, and you can put some life on it, some stories, some patina on it yourself, and it'll actually pick up all of that age and that story along with it, which is something you can't necessarily get from, you know, a little bit more refined, kind of fancier, more modern watches that are using materials like ceramic. Like, that is always ceramic's gonna look like ceramic until it cracks. The nice thing about these types of bezels, we know what they look like after a couple of years. They look fantastic. You go look up used 6306s or, you know, 6309s, and they look fantastic. You go look up, you know, some well-loved and well-worn Seiko SKXs, and they look amazing. And the cool thing is, this is a watch that is still within that price point to where you can make it look amazing on your own, and, you know, you can pass this down, and it's just a serious piece that doesn't cost too much. So with all that said, let's actually get this off the wrist, get some low light transition, Lume shots, and closing thoughts. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, fantastic Lume. Nothing's falling short, nothing's underperforming. It all just does its job, and it does it really, really well. I like that it's a more of a rendition of printed Lume versus trying to imitate applied indices. Like some of the newer watches, you know, they have raised indices that are basically punched in through the back and polished really nicely, and it looks pretty cool in terms of the integration. But here, you're getting something that's a little bit more toolish and a little bit more true to the original aesthetic, which I think tie in really beautifully. So one thing I like to do is get in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you can find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just enjoying some time in your favorite automobile. So it's nice to see what the colors and textures and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to even include some high contrast lighting like you're going to see here, which would typically expose any type of defects within that finish. But you can see the way that it's just all business. The way that the dial plays with light is very similar to the way that the bezel insert plays with light. That bezel insert does have a shielded Lume pip there at 12, so it's also protected. It's not going to patina on you, prematurely, like you might get with another type of watch where it isn't protected on that, that Lume plot. And you can see it's just gorgeous, ultimately legible, and it's just powerful Lume. It's diver's Lume. You can even see when you get in a very dim lighting, it's just really legible. You can see the way that the glints of of that indexing on that bezel insert still grab and reflect light. That's not something you're always going to get with a at least a non-lumed ceramic bezel insert. It's typically just going to be white paint, right? White paint is white and it's legible, but it doesn't capture light. It doesn't reflect light. The same way that a metallic tone will, which here you can see tonally those are, silver markings there that really just flow absolutely beautifully. So what is it about the SKX that everybody loves so much? And again, it's that idea, that romantic idea that when you could buy those for $150 to $300, on a strap that was really stiff and terrible to wear. You threw it on a NATO, and it was just this cool, I don't care piece. And it looked great. It looked fantastic like that. And this keys into that same magic. I've seen a couple of these even from the original reissue, years from not too long ago, where people have really put some wear marks on them, and they look great. I have to say, these pick up age well. So although they're not age proof like some of the other models that are out there, the way that they wear the age is just really gorgeous. And I think that really keys in that magic. I mean, even think back to the late 80s, early 90s in terms of collecting dive watches in general. The Rolex Sub was a completely attainable watch. You could get those used, for in the low thousands. Now they're, you buy one and you're not going to be doing much with it unless you're hyper rich. You'd wear it maybe as a tool watch. And then even if you get the older models, the vintage ones, you're going to be even more careful with them. Right? So you if you miss the boat on when you could buy those new, then you really aren't going to wear them the same way that you would. The crazy thing is you can buy this watch new right now, guys. And again, I recommend Market Long Island Watch, authorized dealer, great customer service, always interesting stock, and he's always has his eye on the pulse in terms of what's coming in and what the new trends are. So really glad that I bought from Mark. Happy to support him and plug the shop here. And again, I even got the strap through him as well. So, you don't have to order from any specialty website. You can actually get a genuine Tropic rubber strap. And I'll again keep an eye on the channel, and I'll do a full review of the Tropic rubber straps. This is in 22. I have the 20mm on my Slim Turtle. Closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, it wears more like a 42. The specs can be deceiving. It definitely screams that retro vintage aesthetic. And even if you don't recognize the iconic reference points, you can tell that this is just a no-nonsense dive watch with a really timeless aesthetic. And then, I'm not going to get too much in terms of model variants because there's so many of them, but comparable models, if you're intimidated by the overall size with this piece, even knowing how well Seikos wear, like let's say you just have a really small wrist or you've tried one of these on and it was just too big, you could still try either the similarly scarce mini turtle line, which are becoming more collectible as well, but still quite affordable and available. Which one thing to mention, those kind of failed commercially to become kind of the next SKX. So they're also within that kind of collectible niche where they had a much shorter lifespan in terms of when they were running those. So there's going to be a lot less of those flooding the market. Same thing for these. Although they did have a decent run, I mean, they didn't run as long as the SKX did, or the ones before. So I think that's really something special. Or you could even go upstream to the newly released Slim Turtle, which pays homage to that iconic 6105-8000 series that predated the famous 6105-8010 Willard Turtle, known from Apocalypse Now. So for me, guys, bottom line, get these while you can, wear them and enjoy them at this price point. Especially, you can buy them new and you can wear them like a tool watch, like a dive watch, like it's meant to be worn, and you can knock it around and beat it up, and it'll look even better for it. So in the same way that many of yesterday's collectors wore and enjoyed the SKX before it became so collectible, and the Submariner and tons of other tool watches that now are just steel sports watches, everybody loves them now, right? You can experience that same magic, and I think this is a really great choice for you to choose to go on that journey with. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do it like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.